Hello, this is Oregon State University, and this is a how-to video for the SBU assay, specifically the SPE portion. So this assay is done using solid phase extraction. We're using a Sapelco LC8 column. You can use any octio column. You can use a single vacuum flask or a vacuum manifold if you want to do multiple speed extractions simultaneously. Today we're just going to cover the SPE portion of the procedure, and we will detail specifically the portions that are ambiguous in the methodology. So we're going to start with sample preparation already completed. This is a degassed beer sample that's been acidified. The first step in the procedure is to condition the column with water and methanol. A 4 ml addition of methanol, followed by a 2 ml addition of water, It's extremely important that at no point during the extraction is the liquid level ever allowed to fall below the packing of the column. There should be a minimum of 1 millimeter of either solvent or sample over the top of the column at all times. After the column conditioning is complete, you add the acidified beer sample, the volume of 2 milliliters. And it's extremely important at this part that the flow rate does not exceed 2 mils per minute. A good way to measure that is to get out a stopwatch or a timer and just measure your flow rate with a known volume. And after you do that a few times, you'll have a pretty good idea of what your flow rate is just based on the drop rate. As the sample is pulled through the column, you should see an accumulation of polyphenols, melanoidins, and alpha acids on the column. If you exceed the 2 mil per minute flow rate, you'll actually lose some of your alpha acids and isoalpha acids out the bottom, which will make the assay inaccurate. The next step of the procedure involves the addition of solvent A in a quantity of 10 mils, which, as you can see, the Sapelco columns only hold about 6 mils, so you can increase your capacity with an extender just to make life a little easier so you don't have to babysit it as much. Again, making sure that the eluent level doesn't drop below the column. The next addition is 5 milliliters of solvent B, and this is the first addition that includes methanol, so you will see some color loss from the column. And it's, again, still very important that you don't exceed the 2 mil per minute flow rate. Okay, as B is about finished, you should stop the flow while making sure that the solvent still is above the top level of the column. And the next eluent you will need to retain. So at this point, it can be a good idea, depending on your methodology, to get rid of the solvent you're going to discard, which I will go ahead and do now. Since you'll need to retain the eluent with solvent C in a 10 ml flask, you can use a couple different methods to capture it. The method I've chosen to use is a volumetric flask with a standoff made from a rubber stopper, which will sit right inside the vacuum flask. And if you're going to try that, make sure you do empty your used solvents and discarded diluents first, or your flask might float away on you. And the final addition is 3 aliquots of solvent C. And it is still important that you don't run the column dry between aliquots, or you'll trap some air bubbles. After you've collected the sample, you need to bring it up to volume. So hopefully you're using a volumetric flask, but it's important you let it equilibrate and reach room temperature before you bring it all the way up to volume. That usually takes about 5 minutes. Once the sample has equilibrated to room temperature, you'll bring up to volume with solvent C. And then mix it thoroughly before you read the absorbance. The final step before reading the absorbance is to filter the sample. A syringe filter works the best. After you've thoroughly mixed and brought it to volume, you can just add the sample to a syringe filter and filter directly into your Falcon tube or another flask, whichever you have handy. And it's now ready to read the absorbance.